Hi, I'm Lynn Morgan, your slippery shod pastor, and I'm with you today on opening day of the baseball season. And it's July 23rd. Hard to imagine that today is opening day of baseball, but indeed it is. And so that makes it a good day because more baseball is always more fun. But, I'm not a great baseball fanatic, I'm not a great sports fan, but I do like baseball a lot. And I've been to see just a handful of major league games in my life. Most of them were not very memorable to me, even though it was quite an occasion because, we live in Buffalo, we can see minor league games, but not major league games unless you travel. And so all the major league games I've seen, I've been on the road for some other reason and been able to slip in a game here or there. And the most memorable game I ever attended was during a church conference that was being held in St. Louis. And I remember driving my car to the baseball stadium, Cardinal Stadium in St. Louis, the Busch Stadium in those days, and watching the game. And it was a terrific game. It was against the Kansas City Royals, and they tied it up. And so it went into extra innings. And there was a little voice in my head when they started getting into extra innings, it said, "You better leave, Lynn." And I dismissed that little voice because I thought, why would I leave? The game is tied up and they're playing extra innings. This is a bonus. I never get to be at major league games, and here I am. And it's a wonderful warm summer night, but not terrible. And I'm having a ball. And so I stayed until the very last out. And as I was walking out of the stadium, I remembered why that little voice had been prodding me to go home or to go out to my car. And the reason was that I had parked in an off-brand parking ramp, not the one that was designated for the baseball stadium, but some other one, because it was a lot cheaper. But it had hours of operation that were limited, and this game had gone late, and it had gone later than that car ramp was open. Oops. So there I was, outside this locked, gated car ramp, trying to contact the security guards to see if I could convince them to let me in to get my car out. I could pay, whatever charge they wanted so I could just get it and go, but no luck at all with that. And so there I was, quite a bit removed from downtown St. Louis, where my hotel was. And at midnight, I was trudging my way back to the hotel. And at first, I was just berating myself. You bonehead, you cheapskate. You're paying your own price for your own stupidity. And I was a little worried because I was all by myself, and it was midnight, and I was in a big city that I didn't know. And I was worried, am I going through a bad neighborhood? Am I in danger? Well, it turns out I wasn't in danger. And it was an adventure. And the next day, I was able to call a cab and go back and get my car. And so this game, which could have been like all the other games I've ever seen in my life, that is to say, fine, but not memorable, it became for me, in fact, the most memorable experience I've ever had of going to a baseball game, and a positive one that I really look back on with just gratitude that I had the whole experience, including the walk back to the hotel and the time to just, enjoy the quiet of the city. So the reason I'm telling you this story is both because it's opening day of baseball, but also because this week in the Sunday readings, we're going to look at Romans chapter 8. And I'm not going to preach on this, but of course I've read it and I've thought about it. And so there's a verse in there that many people quote in situations like one finds oneself in at midnight in St. Louis as a stranger when you're locked out of your car. And that is Romans 8:28. And some of you already can quote it by memory. We know all things work together for good for those who love God, who are called according to God's purpose. Now, some people would say, see, God arranged all this, arranged my cheapskatedness, arranged my ignoring my little warning to myself, and arranged that the security guard either wouldn't answer his phone or wouldn't let me into the ramp. No. God doesn't put God's finger on the scales like that and manipulate things in our lives. I don't believe that at all. Someone could also say, well, but God allowed it all to happen so that you could have this positive experience. And I think that's just a light version of the first objection, that God arranges these experiences. What I would say is that verse is entirely true, that all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to God's purpose. And the reason for that is that we can be open to our experience. We can be trusting that even in a difficult experience, it doesn't take away God's love and God's purpose in our life. It doesn't take away the possibility for joy and flourishing, even when bad things are happening. So all of us have been through a trying time, more difficult for many than it is perhaps for those of us who are listening to me right now. There's some people who have suffered grief and lost family members. There are people who have lost their jobs, and that might include some of the people who are hearing me right this minute. There are people certainly who have lost important dates that they had planned for. We had a wedding that was planned in the church that could not be pulled off because of this COVID infection. And you think how important a date like that is to have it canceled because of an outside influence. It's tough to take. All the kids who graduated from high school and college who could not have all the attendant ceremony of that, well, you know, in many ways, big and small, our lives have been affected. I mean, for Pete's sake, baseball starting on July 23rd. But in all these things, if we are open to experience life and to count on its joy and make room for this wonder and happiness that can happen even in the times of trial and trouble, well, then they can be ours. And God will be sure to be with us. And if we love God and trust God, then this day, even when it goes all sideways, is still a good day. And my prayer for you today is that you would have a day that's full of blessing and joy and confidence in God's love that will never be taken away from any of us.